welcome back to part 4 of our Game of the Decade series, in which we go through the 2010s year by year to find the best game of each one, before coming back to debate which of the 10 nominees are the true Game of the Decade. And this time it's 2013's turn. The 5 participating GameXplain members each have 3.5 minutes to make their case for what they believe the best game of that year is, and then they'll have to defend it for the same amount of time in the interrogation round. Once everyone's presented and defended their game, we'll all vote. And that includes you too, as we're counting our lovely fan base as a 6th GameXplain member. Just use the link in the description below to make your voice heard. And we'll announce the results at the beginning of the next year's video. And speaking of which, congratulations to Kid Icarus Uprising for taking the crown as our nomination for 2012's Game of the Decade. And with that, let's get to our 2013 Game of the Decade arguments. Take it away, Ash.
Alright, so, my game of the year for 2013, and I'm obviously objectively correct, you guys. My winner is The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. And this game is fantastic, but why A Link Between Worlds? Well, it blends traditional 2D Zelda gameplay with and familiar elements with an entirely new form of open-ended, non-linear progression. For the series, of course. It's not, open world games have been done before, but for Zelda 2D, not so much. So, the usual formula: enter a dungeon, get the key item or tool from the big chest, then use that item against the boss. Not in this game, actually. Throw all those expectations out the window. Instead, at the very beginning of the game, well, not the very beginning, like just past the beginning of the game, you rent items from this really interesting character called Ravio, who is important to the game's story, but I'm not going to spoil anything, of course. And you can eventually buy these items as well later in the game, and it really is completely up to you to decide what to rent and how to use it to expand where you can explore in Hyrule and Lorule. So the game is not holding your hand, as other traditional 2D Zeldas have, where you go from Dungeon 1 to Dungeon 2 to Dungeon 3. Even the original Zelda, yes, you could explore it kind of at your leisure, but not, you were still kind of stonewalled by certain things you couldn't do, right? So this is very much a new thing for 2D Zelda to try. However, you do lose all the rented items you have if you die, as the sneer over here on the villain Yuga says. He's looking all creepy there, and that's because if he beats you, you lose everything you have in terms of rented items, which you have to go rent and buy them again, do some backtracking. And that actually, what I love about that, it adds a welcome sense of risk to Zelda that has been missing in the series. The games aren't always that great in terms of remaining difficult throughout, and that is a problem that this game has as well, but in kind of a different way. But what I do like is that you do feel like you're at risk of losing things that you need at all times, whereas that's not really true in other Zelda games. And but it helpfully counterbalances this by the fact that, yes, it's open-ended, but the dungeons will, they signpost outside dungeons what you need to complete them, and that is so important. As I underlined here, you guys know, one of my favorite things is games that respect the player's time. Don't lead me on a wild goose chase and make me wander aimlessly for hours only to find out, hey, I didn't bring the right item into the dungeon. No, I can explore for hours at my leisure, but at least when I know that I'm going to go complete a dungeon, I know what I need to take with me to do it. So the game is really respectful of the player's time, despite being open-ended in nature. However, there's also a whole change between perspectives here, which is, of course, wall merge Link. Early on, Link gets an item that allows him to merge into walls, which completely changes the way you look at the game. You consider situations, like where once there were barriers in a game like A Link to the Past or Link's Awakening where you just couldn't get across a cliff. Now you can just merge into the cliff and walk across it. I also like the fact that wall merge Link, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but he's super creepy. I mean, look at this guy. It just bothers me. He's more creepy than the monster, than I think it's the Tektite in the bottom screenshot here. But the game does use this so well because it expects the player to think outside the box in terms of how they have maybe completed Zelda puzzles in the past. Now, or even for new players, you're going to get to the point where you kind of understand what Link can physically do, and then you have to account for the fact that, wait, no, now I can also merge into the wall and get to all these other places that it doesn't seem...
Time.
Oh, really?
He gave you the 30-second. I think you just completely missed it.
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear anything. Well, that sucks. Okay.
Well, that was less a slideshow and more of an essay. So.
Yeah.
Sure.
How many more slides did you have?
I didn't realize. Okay, well.
Oh my gosh.
Man.
Derek, you're a
Holy
psycho.
Crap.
I didn't know. Derek,
there.
you're a psycho. A Link Between Worlds is great, but not as good as Link to the Past.
I object.
So that's...
Ash is still getting an
well,
argument.
then that's okay.
Actually, that's worth it for that point. But
well, I did what Andre did then. The first day.
Yep.
I just had it way too long.
I hear ya. All right. Well, I guess it's time to move on to the Q&A portion, where we all will grill Ash on his choice. So, who wants to start things off here?
I can. As Ash has pointed out, I famously believe that Link Between Worlds is better than Link to the Past, and I stand by that. I was actually really close to picking this game myself for Game of the Year, but held off. That said, I have heard plenty of complaints directed at me that because of the open nature of the game, the difficulty never really increases at all. It just sort of stays at a plateau throughout the entire thing until the very end because you can go to any dungeon in any order. How do you counter that?
I admit that. It's true. A Link Between Worlds isn't a perfect game, and neither is any Game of the Year, but I think the fact that it counterbalances what you expect with that open-ended exploration makes for a fun and refreshing take on 2D Zelda. However, yes, that was one of my complaints as well, but I would also counter that by saying this is a problem with open-world games in general, or at least open-world Zelda games, because Breath of the Wild has the same exact problem, and everybody loves that game. Of course, it's really great, but A Link Between Worlds is hardly the only game to commit that crime in terms of being open-ended and having kind of a wonky difficulty curve as a result.
I'll tell you something, Ash, I didn't like about low roll. I felt exploration in low roll was de-emphasized because to get to dungeons, you had to go into the light world and find a portal to the dark world, and that was basically how you got to your dungeons. You didn't really explore the dark world. All you do is explore the light world and then find a portal that takes you to the dungeon in the dark world. So do you feel like low roll is as good as the dark world, or is it lower quality to you?
It's not the game is called A Link Between Worlds, right? So you are literally linking between worlds to find your way, through the game. So that never really bothered me. I know what you're talking about, but I actually kind of enjoyed having to use the light world to get to other places in low roll. My issue with low roll is a narrative issue in the sense that I know you're not supposed to care too much about story in Zelda, but it annoys me how low roll looks and sounds the exact same as the dark world, which really they shouldn't have any connection. So in terms of lore, that bothers me, but in terms of what low roll represents gameplay wise and how you have to weave between both worlds, even to get to some low roll dungeons, no, that never bothered me. I actually kind of liked that aspect.
How did the name Low Roll itself not bother you? It is a terrible, terrible name.
It does. It is. I mean, it is what it is, right? I'm surprised you think that though, Andre, because it's a pun, and puns are like your thing.
Yeah, but it's not a good one. It's a really bad.
It's not a good one.
This is coming from you.
I know. I'm a little shocked here.
Okay, why do you think making a red box the central gameplay mechanic of this game? Why is that a good thing? Why is it good that you can swap out items via basically a red box?
Well, because, again, it turns what you expect on its head in terms of a 2D Zelda game. I'm not saying I'd want every game to do this, but I do like that this is a very fresh, creative, unique take on what a 2D Zelda can be. And again, it adds a sense of risk to when you're exploring, especially in the early game. Obviously, the more heart containers you get, the easier it gets, like any Zelda game. But when you are at risk of losing all the things you rented at any time if you die, that adds risk that Zelda really just has never had before, which I appreciated that about it. And again, you can eventually buy everything you rent, so that gives a welcome sense of progression, as well as the fact that you can upgrade each item too. So it isn't just, here are all the items, you rent them all from the beginning of the game, and that's it. You can upgrade everything, you can buy everything, so you do feel like you are amassing that traditional Zelda inventory by the end of the game, just in a different way.
How could you talk about how great this game is and not mention the fact that Zelda has like her best design thanks to Smash?
Well, I was, except I ran out of time because I just didn't hear John's 30 seconds. So, Zelda looks great. So does Hilda, and she's a very sympathetic character, too, by the way.
Well done, Ash.
Good job, Ash.
Well done. Yeah, there you go.
Thanks. I wish I agreed, but I just did not realize the time. Damn.
Yeah, it's tough. It can sneak up on you. That's why I practice mine.
Sure can.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It can be tough. Yeah. All right. Derek, you're up.
Game of the Year 2013. Very important stuff here because you need to believe in the Derek. I believe in you, and I believe that you'll believe in me, and know that, once again, as always, I've made the right choice. And that choice for 2013 is Bioshock Infinite. A fantastic FPS and follow-up to the original Bioshock, and a fully realized world to explore. As soon as it actually does something when I click it. There we go. So where do you go after the bottom of the sea? To the sky. And it feels so familiar and yet different. And this aspect permeates the entire game. It really rewards you if you've already played the original Bioshock, and how it's like, well, that feels similar. Oh, okay, that's kind of like Rapture, but different, and it's very odd. But even if you don't have that frame of reference, there's still this great unsettling feeling about the world as you begin to explore it. And then there's the fact that, again, this connection is really played up with the fact that there's always a lighthouse. And it has one of the most engaging openings in any game. You are in the middle of a storm, you go to this lighthouse, you travel up it, the sky opens up and this weird song plays, and then you get transported up, and then you're in this like church-like area with people getting baptized and everything going on, and then you just start exploring Columbia itself, and it's just seeing how it seems like a paradise. But then eventually the darker edges start to appear and all hell breaks loose where the action properly begins. But it's a really engaging opening. And then we have the gunplay in the skies, which really changes up how the gunplay was from the original Bioshock and Rapture, where it was all tight spaces and just have people crowding you and trying to just breathe. Like it really wanted to enclose in on you, which is fitting for the bottom of the ocean. But with Columbia, you could have these wide open spaces to battle in and have room to move, and especially with the enemies being bigger and definitely more ambitious, and the Vigor powers taking advantage of this as well. And then, of course, we had the skylines that you could use to escape or surprise enemies, which was also very different and satisfying. The fact that you could not just hang there; you were always on the move, and it made positioning in the gameplay a lot of fun. And then, of course, we have Elizabeth herself, basically the star of the show, really, and she is, to me, one of the most compelling women in gaming. Seeing her trapped for how long and not really know much of the outside world, and seeing her experience the outside world. The first time you escape and you see her on the beach, and yes, there is a beach in the sky, you get to see the joy of her being in the outside world, her dancing and enjoying herself. And then, of course, her powers also give a different twist to Bioshock's combat as well, and create some very memorable moments. It's also, you get tons of themes. Basically, what you get out of its themes will definitely vary depending on the person. I've seen people not really enjoy the story, but I got a lot out of it and enjoyed what it was trying to say, with some great characters, and actually not having a silent protagonist as in a first-person game. That's really nice. Okay.
All right.
Just going through. See all this?
There's more.
Take note of it. But yeah, there we go. I got through most of it.
All right.
God, these are hard.
Yeah, they are. Especially if it's a game you're passionate about. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the interrogation round. Derek, are you ready?
I believe so.
Okay. I guess I'll start this one off. Derek, do you think a game needs to end as strongly as it begins? Because if so, Bioshock Infinite definitely is not that, because that ending battle on the airship sucks. Defend it.
I mean, Bioshock doesn't really say... I've not played Bioshock 2, so I can't say anything to its ending, but Bioshock has a problem with endings. I think I still prefer Bioshock Infinite's ending, where it's just... It does feel like a grueling match against just endless waves, which is still kind of preferable to a random boss fight at the end of the original Bioshock that just feels completely out of nowhere and just doesn't do anything for you. But it feels like this last grueling attempt to survive it. And I feel like what happens after that fact is extremely rewarding, because what you get after the original Bioshock is like, well, here's the ending. And here you get like a build-up and a proper payoff. So I do think it's stronger in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Derek, I'm trying to think back to my playthrough of Infinite, and I remember chasing this sort of ghost enemy around. And I was thinking to myself, the game's pacing isn't great. So does it bother you, Derek, that this game has bad pacing?
Does it bother you that's a bad game, Derek?
I didn't notice bad pacing at all. I was engaged throughout most of the game. I feel like the highs and lows were well placed, and there are specific moments that I just highly remember and really enjoy. I think I know what part you're talking about now, and yeah, that's probably one of the weaker moments, but it's still not terrible in my opinion. I still found myself engaged and wanting to push forward. There's a moment that something major happens, and I've never felt so compelled to rescue a person in my life. Like, it was like, oh my god, there are terrible things happening to this person. I need to get to them. I was just in it at the moment, and I need to go back and replay it, I guess, to see if the pacing still holds up. But as of right now, I loved it. I didn't have any issues with the pacing.
So, Derek, I've never played Bioshock Infinite, and part of that is because before it came out, I read an article on Kotaku saying that it was kind of over the top, violent, and a lot of blood and gore in it seemed gratuitous. Are they onto something, or was that just completely an off-base criticism?
I mean, it does get a little violent as far as you have these finishers that can tear up people's faces, and it doesn't look, it's a little over the top, but I don't think it's like you don't see like the sinew and all that stuff. It's not like Mortal Kombat levels or anything like that, but you are brutalizing these people, and I can see the argument that you're kind of a monster because of that, but I also don't think the game fully defends Booker in how he's doing. Like, yeah, these are terrible people and you're doing terrible things to them, but Booker's not the best either, so I think it balances it, at least in my opinion, and it didn't really bug me, especially because of what you see these people do later on.
Okay, well, you got about 10 seconds, but Derek, do you think Infinite hews too closely to the original in terms of what it relies on narratively?
No, because it feels like a proper sequel that expands upon it, and...
Perfect, time.
Yes.
Well done. I was like, can he answer this in 10 seconds? Nicely done.
All right, that was pretty good. Okay, well, I think I am up next.
All right, can Andre be the first to come in under the 3 minutes and 30 seconds?
Oh my god, let's find out, Jesus. All right, here we go. Game of the Decade 2013. An argument that clicks. Get it?
Oh,
nice.
That's right. I am arguing for The Last of Us as the best game of 2013, largely for its narrative and how it marries it with the gameplay. So let's start off at the very beginning here, if I have time. The game opens up incredibly powerfully, where you play as the protagonist's daughter as you wake up in an empty house to all kinds of weird things happening outside, like police cars racing by. Eventually, a neighbor comes and attacks, and that's where your dad comes home and rescues you. So, or tries to rescue you. So you end up in a car as you're racing out of town. As all kinds of wild chaos is happening around you. Eventually you crash, and your father, Joel, has to pick you up and or pick up the daughter and try to race to safety. And this is where the perspective shifts. Because you're no longer playing as the daughter, now you're playing as Joel, her father. And this is where, this kind of shows how the narrative ties into the gameplay and how, the changing perspectives factor into the story. Eventually, spoiler alert, she gets shot, and it's not good. It's a very sad moment. And this is within the first 20 minutes. This is basically the up of video games. It's such a sad, poignant moment, and it's just kind of wild. This is how a game begins, and it's brought to life by phenomenal acting and visuals that make it believable. Perhaps for one of the first times we reached a level of gameplay or graphics that could back it up. Now, the narrative continues throughout the game, and how it's told through the gameplay. So eventually, of course, you meet Ellie, who, over the course of the game, basically, Joel starts to look upon her as a daughter, and how their relationship, is constantly shifting throughout the game. And you can see this reflected in the actual gameplay through Ellie's animations and how she responds to Joel. And it's just a cool way of telling a story. One of my favorite moments of this is when, like in Uncharted, you have these sequences where you need to kind of prop each other up walls to help each other out. And there's one point where you go to get into position, and you're waiting for Ellie to come meet Joel to go up the wall, and she doesn't come. The camera shifts over, and you see her just sitting despondent on a bench, and that's when you realize, oh crap, something's up with her. So again, it's storytelling through gameplay, and it's doing things in a way that you wouldn't be able to be pulled off in any other medium. Effing giraffes. This game has giraffes. They are amazing, and it offers a little bit of hope and optimism in a game that's otherwise pretty dark, but there's always like a kernel of hope here, and that's important to this game because it keeps pushing you forward. Speaking of which, we should talk about the gameplay a little bit and how it's incredibly grounded in this game. The platforming is practical. You're not jumping up collapsing buildings. It has a freeform stealth system that's really open to how you can go about it, including to the extent of using household items to create distractions by throwing them. There is no health regeneration like in Uncharted. Instead, you have to repair yourself, which feels a little bit more realistic. Your health just won't instantly recover by by crouching behind a wall for 5 seconds. And it has a cool listen mode where you can see enemies, or you can gauge where enemies are through walls without
30 seconds.
That just gives you a better perspective of the world, and I find that ties into the heart of the game, which is listening to the world and the people around you. Let's speed up here. Also, there's no ludditive narrative dissonance in this game because it's a very gray world, and at best, everything is ambiguously an enemy. Oh crap! Speaking of which, the ending is ambiguous, which I really enjoyed. To recap, a fantastically emotionally charged story, grounded gameplay, compelling characters, a story told through gameplay, effing giraffes, an ending that makes you think. Finally, in summary,
And time.
Uncharted is for babies, and The Last of Us is for intellectuals.
I love
I
it.
rest my case.
We're all going over today.
Oh my god. All right.
Man.
It's rough.
All right, it's time to grill me.
Okay.
All right, let's
All
open up
right,
the floor.
Andre. I have a lot of experience with The Last of Us. But one thing that bothered me is the AI for human opponents. I camped out in a room one time and stabbed no fewer than 6 dummies as they just walked through a door behind each other waiting for me to kill them. How do you defend the poor AI in this game?
Maybe don't play on easy next time, bro. I can't say I experienced that. I thought the AI overall was pretty good. I mean, yeah, there's moments where, I think in most games, there's going to be instances where they act like morons. But overall, I thought they did a pretty good job of, alerting each other to dead bodies that they encounter. So I can't say I found that to be too much of an issue, or at least not beyond most other games. So yeah, I mean, there's an inherent issue where you're going to find breaks in the AI, but I didn't find it to be too immersion breaking.
All right, now, Andre, I love The Last of Us, and this was almost my pick as well. And I agree that it marries gameplay and narrative incredibly well, but except for one major thing that always pissed me off, which was clickers and such only ever see and hear Joel. So that took me out of the experience because you're hiding and you're terrified while Ellie and Tess and whomever are running around like idiots and clearly within eyesight of the clickers, but they don't get, attacked for it. How do you defend that?
The alternative would be them alerting them constantly to their presence and just making it a really frustrating game. So I can see that. I suppose there's going to be that inherent nature of it being a game where they'll have to allow for some exceptions, to the world building in order to make it function as a game that's just not frustrating. And I actually was aware of that fact going in, and I thought it would bug me, but it didn't bother me as much as I thought, because I thought the developers did a pretty good job of having the characters take cover and, largely kind of holding back behind Joel. I didn't find it to be too intrusive. So I thought they found a pretty good middle ground, especially to the extent that you can actually see like Ellie catching up with you, as opposed to a game like Star Fox Adventure where that stupid dinosaur just warps to wherever you're at. So
I'm going to pick on one of your slides, Andre. There was one point where you said you go to boost Ellie and she doesn't show up. That was an effective moment, but it was only effective because the game does that 1,000 times. And you're always boosting Ellie, you're always boosting characters. It doesn't feel organic because it happens so often. And there's tons of moments like that. Like you've got to get a ladder and slowly prop it up. You've got to get a little raft and push Ellie across the water. How do you defend those moments which are just kind of tedious and they happen so often that it kind of loses the flow of the game?
I didn't find most of them to be much of an issue by themselves, although I will offer no defense for the water segments. Those are just universally terrible, and I can't defend them. So, I will concede that. Those suck. So, luckily, I don't think there's a whole lot of them. As for the rest, I mean, yeah, they're there, but they usually only take a few moments, and I do think, the boosting each other up was worth it for how they turn on its head with that one sequence later on, which then, of course, leads into the most important part of the game, being effing giraffes. So...
Our games have a lot in common, Andre. We have interesting openings. We have a protagonist played by Troy Baker that protects a young girl that cannot be killed in combat, which makes it less aggravating and whatnot. But what Last of Us does have is a crafting mechanic. And one of the things I found kind of odd about a survival game was just how common items were. I didn't feel like I actually had to survive because I always had an overabundance of bullets, of shivs, of whatever I needed. How do you defend that?
I offer the same defense I did to Steve. Don't play on easy next time, bro.
I played on normal, so that's not easy. That's what they expect you to play.
Yeah, I play on whatever the recommended level was. I didn't find that I didn't have that issue. I actually was running out of inventory fairly frequently, to the point there were a couple of times where I had literally nothing. I had nothing I could defend myself with. So I guess just my experience was different. So I can't really defend that. I wish there were better balance for you, but yeah, it worked for me. All right.
Cool.
Nice.
It is weird how similar our games are. Like, I didn't realize
it's
that.
funny. I didn't even realize that.
Funny.
I didn't realize that until you start giving your presentation. I'm like, this game actually is pretty similar. Like, 'cause, yeah, your character is similar enough to mine in terms of narrative and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah.
2013, man.
All right, Steve, take it away.
Okay, so here is my pick for Game of the Year for 2013, and it should come as no surprise. Grand Theft Auto
Oh, didn't see
5.
this coming.
I know, definitely, right? I definitely didn't show you this before. I want to start off with a list of GTA 5's accomplishments. GTA 5 has made more money than any movie. Sorry, that says game. I mean movie. It has outsold and brought in more cash than any movie of all time, and that's as of last year. It has frequently appeared in top sales positions following its release for the last 6 years, and it's shipped nearly 100 million copies, making it one of the best-selling games of all time. Of every system in the history of gaming, GTA 5 is among the most sold. But what about GTA 5 makes it a fun game to play? Money doesn't matter, yo. Money totally matters, by the way, and the world is worse for it, but that's kind of a central theme in GTA games in general, so take that. Here's what makes it great. It tells the story of 3 unique individuals living a life of crime, each with their own unique motivations. Michael is a retiree that got out of the game and moved to LA with his family after a huge heist, and didn't want this to be a thing, but his money runs out. Franklin is struggling to survive in LA and just needs any way to make more money to stay on top. And Trevor is just an insane meth head, and he loves this stuff. So he quite literally lives for it, and he and Michael reconnect, and it just spirals out of control. GTA 5's version of LA feels alive in a way that most games can only hope to replicate. People have routines. There's just random stuff going on. The radio stations are unique. They play real world music, and GTA 5 has one of the best soundtracks of all time, just in general. And finally, vehicles are an absolute blast to control in GTA. Like, car handling feels great. Boats, planes, jets, everything feels fun to use in its own way. But it kind of strikes a great balance between realism and arcade feel. But wait, there's more. Ignore that tip. That's a placeholder. Grand Theft Auto Online. That's right. There are 2 games in one. You can be your worst self. That's me in the top hat and the aviators. GTA Online lets you participate in pure chaos. You want to kill your friend with a rocket launcher? Go for it. Put a hit out on someone? Sure. Drive a motorcycle into a strip club with C4 strapped to it, then detonate it inside? You're awful for doing that, but that's the point. I have a yacht named the SS Mudbutt. That's a true story. To recap, GTA 5 tells an amazing story. It's made more money than most games ever. It sold more copies than most games ever.
30
it's
seconds.
mechanically and narratively excellent. It lets you do whatever you want as long as it's bad and wrong. If you didn't pick GTA 5, you're wrong. Sorry, I don't make the rules. And that's it. I made it.
All
Good
right.
job. I'm impressed.
Nice.
You finished it.
Well
Good job,
done.
Steve.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's time
Yeah.
to go to the interrogation round. So, who wants to start things off here for Steve?
Steve, you brought up a point about the story, and I actually disagree. I feel like the writing isn't great at times. There's this one chapter where you play as Michael, and you basically go into this place that's basically Facebook, and all the employees are elitists, and you're meant to just sort of hack into their systems while they all just sort of they don't really know like you're there. They just kind of accept it, and you're like this. You're like dressing up as an intern, and I find it all very unbelievable and just outright not that fun. So do you think the writing is always great, or can it just sort of lose itself sometimes?
I think with any game, you're going to find parts that aren't as strong as others, right? Every game has high notes and low notes. That said, I vividly remember that specific mission, and I think it speaks more to me because I used to work in Silicon Valley at a major tech firm, and the culture in those companies, like it very much comes off as a realistic satire of one of those Silicon Valley big tech companies. So, I mean, I personally found a lot of humor in it because of the culture that I understand there, and knowing that this is kind of an over-the-top interpretation of it. But yeah, I can definitely give you that it wouldn't hit for everybody.
All right, Steve. So a lot of the arguments you gave could also be given, it sounds like, to almost any of the other GTA games. So what makes GTA 5 stand out among the rest of the series?
So you're wrong. And I'll tell you why. GTA 5 is the first one to offer more than one primary protagonist. It's also the first one to have an online component that's kind of fully realized. But what makes it interesting is the interweaving of Michael Franklin's and Trevor's narratives. That's something that a GTA game has never done. And that's probably one of the best things about the single-player campaign, is that you've got these three very distinct, very well-written people who all kind of converge based on their circumstances, but they all have very different reasons for why they're doing what they're doing. And towards the end, you can make them disagree, and the ending can play out differently based on your choices.
So, Steve, I have no problem with morally bankrupt protagonists. I mean, Joel, right here in The Last of Us, he's a terrible person. Same thing with, Wander from Shadow of the Colossus. He kills all these innocent creatures, right? But even compared to them, I found Trevor to be completely, absolutely insufferable, and I just wanted to see him die over and over again. Defend Trevor to me. How could you ever enjoy playing as that douchebag?
See, but that's the thing. Some of the best games make you do something you don't enjoy. Think of the microwave hallway in Metal Gear Solid 4. You didn't want to do it, but you did it. And Trevor is an important component of that narrative. You're not supposed to like Trevor. I mean, you can, if you're that kind of guy, but the point is he's a foil to Michael and Franklin, who are both kind of more reserved, more thoughtful. They don't want to get caught. They care about the consequences. Trevor is the wild card that kind of threatens to blow everything up.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I'll be honest, I have not been able to finish any Grand Theft Auto game, and I've just kind of given up on the series at this point because it just never clicked with me. But from what I've ever seen of GTA 5, this one seems more mean-spirited than almost all the others. Do you agree with that, or you think it's less?
I think it's the same. I think that the whole point of GTA is they've always lampooned the real world, and there's a bit of mean-spiritedness in that, but it's always coming from a place of trying to be funny. Love you.
I'm not hearing any of that last bit. Good time.
Good job,
well done, Steve.
Well done.
All right, nicely done.
Okay. Well, I guess, is it John up last, I believe?
Yeah, I think I'm finishing off.
All right.
I think so, yep.
Okay. All right, to finish off then, my 2013 Game of the Year. So before we get into it, I'll bring up a little problem with media. Here is a fella. That's Mario, right? And here's another Mario. These are these are the same character, but from two different games. Now, which game, based on these renders, do you think sold the most? I'll tell you. The one on the left sold 30.28 million units. The one on the right sold 6.32 million units. But look at them. One of them's just sort of standing there with his arms out, his legs evenly apart. The other one's having fun on a dinosaur that's been, blown up. So why did the other one sell so great? And you know what? Nintendo reused the exact same position, but sort of updated the render for the next game. So clearly something is going on with this render, and I'll tell you what it is. It's a thing that John calls sterile theory. I believe that consumers are drawn to colourful characters that are making eye contact with you, that's just standing still, with their arms showing no intention of moving. I think people love these characters, parents especially, and the reason they love it is because they see these characters and they say, it looks like they'll be fun, but not too much fun for my child. I don't want them getting too crazy. So the thing is, people love these characters that just sort of stand there. And here's the problem. My 2013 Game of the Year doesn't have that. This game's released on 8 different platforms, and the company has never released the sales data for this game. And it's because it doesn't have sterile theory, and it looks like this. It's Rayman Legends. Rayman is not looking at you, he's looking at the character he's beating up. Rayman he's flailing everywhere, his arms are not evenly apart. The only character with even legs in this image is Murphy, the fly at the top. And there's 4 different characters, all are very expressive with different positions, none of them are standing in the exact same way. So, parents don't want their kids to have fun. They look at Rayman, and they say, ugh, get it away from me, bring back the sterile man! People missed out on Rayman Legends. Rayman Legends is full of imagination. The mechanics are super tight, and it diverged from generic world themes. There's so much variety. So yeah, it's based on medieval themes, but There's also a world where there's stealth mechanics, and you're going underwater and avoiding lights. There's also these 3D boss battles, and there's also these music levels that really shake up the visual themes. Rayman Legends even includes worlds and levels from Rayman Origins, the prior game, because why not? They're built on the same engine, so why not give you more? And also, it's asymmetrical gameplay. In Mario, here's how it worked. You place blocks around and people said, please stop that isn't helpful, you're getting in the way, I hate you. In Rayman Legends, though, people say, I'm having such a good time, will you marry me? Because they love the asymmetrical gameplay in this game, because the game's built around it. On the gamepad, Murphy actually has a pure gameplay mechanic where you can interact with the environment and help out the players. He's not just placing blocks for the sake of it, the game was built around this mechanic. And also, just general co-op, people will still like you when you play with them, because you won't collide instantly. You can actually work together, but you have to hold up the up button to sort of lift them up rather than just bouncing off each other.
30 seconds.
And also, there isn't a life system because there's no lives, and lives are unintuitive in platformers these days. In New Super Mario Bros., you'll finish the game with 99 lives because you don't need those lives. Lives don't respect your time. In Rayman Legends, there are no lives. And I hear you. Ash Paulson's over here, he's saying, I don't like Rayman, I hate fun character designs. Well, Ash, in Rayman Legends, you can play as Rayman, Glowbox, Murphy, the Tinsy, and all these other character designs over here. There are so many you can play as. So vote for Rayman, because he would vote
I'm
for
very
you.
happy to say time.
Alright, good job, John.
Nicely done.
Alright. Well, you ready to get
Well
interrogated?
I think so.
Alright, here we go. Who wants to start things off here with questions to
Oh,
John?
I want to start things off here. I want to start things off here. All right, John, Rayman is an objectively crappy character design. I hate this guy almost as much as I do Crash Bandicoot. I hate his stupid face. Defend his design. He has no limbs. Come on.
He's half a
Ash,
character.
don't play as him then. Look at all these other characters you can play as. There's a great barbarian character
But it's
here.
about him.
You don't have to play as him. You never have to choose Rayman. You can choose your character right from the very start of the game. So if you don't like his character design, go to the barbarian woman on the right over there. She's a great character. And personally, I do like Rayman. I find he's not sterile, Ash. I think you're subjected to sterile theory. You love the characters with their arms apart. I think you're the problem, Ash.
Nice.
Wow.
All right.
Oh, man.
So you talked about the asymmetrical gameplay, but I also noticed you focused on the Wii U version, and as you said, it was released on 6 other platforms as well. Have you played those other platforms, and how well does that asymmetrical gameplay work in those games?
I have played those other versions. I played the Xbox One version, and it actually works really well. So, if you want asymmetrical gameplay, you have to play on Wii U. But the Murphy mechanic is just mapped to a button in the other versions of the game. So basically, you press like the circle button, and Murphy will cut what he's meant to cut in the Wii U version. So clearly, the Wii U is the way to play. But it's still very natural to play on other versions as well. It's basically just an action button in those versions. So I feel like they integrated those mechanics very well, but if you want to play the game in the best way possible, Wii U is the way to go.
I'm with Ash. Any mascot that doesn't have arms needs to die a slow and painful death. They got
not fat
tired.
enough.
Thank
The
you.
designers were so tired of him, they didn't even finish drawing his arms and legs on. They're like, screw it, we'll just.
Well, his
they'll fly
design,
out
though,
there.
is part of his gameplay. Rayman can throw his fists in the air. I feel like they merit that design. It's part of his core moveset. Whereas, like, the barbarian character has an axe because she can't throw her fists in the air. So I feel like they definitely do get a lot out of his design.
What is he though?
He's a very
That's kind of the thing. It's up for debate. I'd say he's a weird ant thing, but who knows?
All right, let me ask you this, John. A realistic question. You've already put up one 2D platformer in this series. Looking at the broader picture, would you put Rayman Legends above your own pick of Donkey Kong Country Returns?
Ooh.
As a multiplayer game, yes. I feel like the multiplayer in Donkey Kong Country isn't the strength, whereas Rayman not only has great co-op gameplay, but it also has asymmetrical gameplay, so there's 2 different ways to play. You can play with co-op where everyone plays as characters and have fun that way, or you can play with someone else and have 2 different experiences and work together. I feel like Rayman Legends and Rayman Origins have the best co-op multiplayer of any platformer.
I will say that I love the music levels. However, I also feel like the music levels peak basically after the first level. The best level is Castle Rock, and none of the others follow up to that. And what would you say to that?
I think Castle Rock makes a great first impression. It's definitely one of the best levels in the game. But I do feel that each other one does have their merit as well. The music's always great, you're always sort of playing along to the themes, and they gradually get more intense, so you get tons of great visual effects playing
And
as you
time.
go through.
Good job, John.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done.
Nicely done.
And that's the end of our 2013 Game of the Decade debate. So we're off to go vote. And you should go vote too using the link in the description below. Remember, your votes count as if you are a 6th Game Explained member. So make sure to check back tomorrow to see who won 2013, along with our debate of which game from 2014 could be our Game of the Decade. Hey, if you click that subscribe button and ring the bell, you'll be notified as soon as the video's up. And with that, we'll see you tomorrow.